This is the Freehill Life podcast, episode number 159. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freehill Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome back, everybody. Happy to be here, and good to know that we are deep in the snow season at this point. So, happy holiday time to everybody out there as we're starting to head into a beautiful time of year where hopefully you will find some more time to drop some knees, spend some time with some family and friends, and always just a good time because usually the snowpack is getting better by this point, both in the backcountry and in the resort, and that's what it's all about. So I hope you're all enjoying it out there. So we're going to jump into some newsroom and notes to kind of get things rolling here. As usual, I always like to talk about what's going on at the shop. Last week, we announced some new hours and wanted to bring that up again. It seemed to work out pretty well for us. Hopefully, it worked out for you on the other end of it, which is why we're always trying to tweak it and make it so it works with the small team that we have, but also providing good customer service with everybody, both near and far in Salt Lake, in Utah, and then of course the other places all over the place. So we do a lot of business online, so we're doing our best to keep up, especially as we're growing. All of you out there, thank you so much for all the word of mouth. That's how we've built this business, and it's been a phenomenal way to get to know more telemark skiers from around the globe, and that's the whole point. So I guess the word of mouth cliche is true. So to kick things off, we've been talking a lot about boots this year. Not always the fun stuff about boot technology and new stuff, but the fact that there have been 0 boots from Scarpa here in the United States this year thus far. But I have good news. Our boots are in the air, flying to us directly to Freehill Life. We feel very grateful. We're the only retailer that is going to be getting a direct shipment from Italy. The rest of the retailers are going to have to wait for them to go to Boulder and then out to them. So what that means, many of you have already been contacted this week. We've been building this list for the last couple of weeks to make sure that we can get payment and lock in your boots. We're kind of getting everything that's been back ordered from all of our orders all the way back to September. So you can imagine there's a lot of demand built up, and we want to make sure that we're servicing the customers that we know need boots. If you are someone out there that needs Scarpa Telemark boots, 75 millimeter T2 Eco, women's T2 Eco, T4, or Scarpa TX Pro, Scarpa TX Comp in the NTM platform, reach out to us. We want to make sure that in this first batch, we don't know what we're getting beyond this because it's so late in the season. Anybody who knows and understands ski retail, I mean, usually once you get into January, you're heading towards spring at that point, even though you're kind of midwinter. So keep that in mind. Reach out to the team, customer service at freeheellife.com. Let us know name, phone number, email, and be sure to let us know the size and model. If you don't know how to size your Telemark boots, we've got some good stuff on our YouTube channel that you can check out and some resources. And of course, we can call and walk you through it, but we want to make sure you don't miss out on getting boots if you need them. So please message us today and get on the radar. So other things to watch out for, upcoming podcasts that I'm super excited about. I've confirmed a recording date with Russell Rainey from Rainey Designs, which was the precursor to 22 Designs. We've talked about it a bunch on the podcast over the years. Very influential bindings in the history of Telemark in terms of the Super Loop, the Hammerhead, And I'm really, really excited that I was able to track Russell down with some help from some friends, and looking forward to that conversation. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Another one that I've got on my radar, I don't know when it'll be coming out, but I'll be talking to an old friend of mine, Sarah Clemenson. She's one of the strongest female telemark skiers I've ever seen. Big mountain skier, back from kind of the early 2000s. And she spent a little bit of time racing and was a Nike athlete and in some Warren Miller films, Unparalleled films. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation as well. So some cool history podcasts coming in not too far in the future. So be sure, if you are not subscribed to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to do that so you don't miss any episodes, and would love to have you check it out. On that note, if you're an Apple Podcast listener, thanks for the reviews that you've been leaving. I always like to read these. I was going to read a couple of the more recent ones. If you are an Apple Podcast listener and you haven't rated and reviewed the podcast, please take a second and do that. It helps us get in front of more people that are looking for information about snow sports. And of course, we want to get in front of the telemarketers, but also snow people far and wide. This latest review is great. It says, thank you, 5-star review. Josh is relentless. I learn a lot from this podcast and other media available on the Freehill Life YouTube channel. They also do awesome customer service at the Freehill Life shop. Spread Telemark. So I love hearing those. And then I was going to read you one more. It says, stoked, 5-star review. Telemark has died and gone to heaven with this podcast. So I love that, because people are always saying Telemark's dead. So welcome to the Pirate Radio Telemark Show, as I've said before, and thank you for sending those reviews over. I always appreciate that, and helps us get more people checking it out. So today's podcast, I'm going to be doing a year in review. I wanted to kind of just go back over the last 12 months, some of the news stories that have come out, things that are going on in the wider telemark realm of things that have gone on in the Freehill Life world, of course, and just various topics, including I'm going to give you some of my top podcast episodes that I've done in the past 12 months so that you can check them out. I'll put the links into the show notes so you can also go back and listen to those. I know that many of you are diehard every week, every Monday. You're checking out the podcast. I appreciate that so much. I'm humbled that there's so many people out there that are willing to take time to listen to what I'm talking about, listen to what our business is doing, and just listen to the history and all the other things that I cover on the podcast. It's a dream come true for me to be able to share sort of my brand of telemark and the stuff that I'm into, and that many of you are out there listening. That's such a cool experience for me. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And wanted to just kind of bring that into focus with sort of this year in review, and just kind of talk about some basic things that have happened in 2022 as we start heading in to the new year. So I wanted to kick things off with a couple, I wanted to put these into the kind of sort of the main body of the podcast, only because I think they're important mentions. The first one, so both of these little tidbits were actually from a text conversation I was having with my old friend, Dickie Hall. And for those of you who are not familiar with Dickie Hall, he is he's one of the telemark greats, and somebody who spent 4 decades plus of their life instructing, creating media, movies, events, his organization, NATO, North American Telemark Organization, put on a festival at Mad River Glen for 40 years before retiring from that. And anyone who's familiar with telemark skiing in New England in the United States has probably heard the name Dickie Hall. And many people can trace their telemark experience and their learning experience back to one of his clinics and kind of his whole entourage of people that were around him. So many great folks that taught for Dickie, and he just had Dickie's just got an amazing zest for telemark. And anyways, we were texting back and forth a little bit the other day. He brought to my attention that his good friend and collaborator, Nicholas Osborne, has passed on. And I just wanted to bring this up, and I'll put a link to his to the obituary that Dickie shared with me. And I met him once at one of the NATO festivals at Mad River, but the visual of Nick is what I remember most, because anybody who's watched any of these old telemark movies that Dickie Hall had put out through NATO, this was Nick was right there with him. And I'm going to read a little bit. I just want to read this first paragraph of this because I think it's a great homage. And feel free to go read it. I'd encourage that as well, because obviously he did a lot of other things. It wasn't just telemark movies, but there is mention of that as well. So this is from November 16th of this year. Lifelong community member and environmental activist Nicholas C. Osborne passed away peacefully at his home in Taconic on October 8th, 2022, surrounded by family and friends. The firstborn son of longtime Salisbury residents Robert and Elodie Osborne, Nick was 75 years old, artist, builder, teacher, and outdoorsman. Nick was a bear of a man with an instinctive ingenuity. His was a different way of doing things. With humor, humility, and enthusiasm, he unapologetically bushwhacked a path through this world. And, this Dickie Hall in this text also said, when he was saying the passing of my good friend and partner in telemark movies, Nick Osborne, he said, a true pioneer in our way of life. And I wanted to just shed some light on that, and someone who has contributed largely to these movies and that whole NATO experience, So I wanted to make sure to mention that. Dickie also brought up the Jack Frost Festival, which has already happened. This is down in Whitegrass in West Virginia. Big shout out to West Virginia, Chip Chase. I've had him on the podcast as well. If you haven't familiarized yourself with Chip Chase, please do. He's a fantastic human and just an all-around good guy, and also someone that I met through kind of that Dickie Hall crowd up in New England. And just great guy. But they had their annual Jack Frost Festival on December 3rd, the 41st annual, actually. So I missed that on this particular podcast, but I am going to link to Whitegrass, their website. They've got some full moon ski tours, and it's just a cool place to check out. So Whitegrass, West Virginia, make sure to check it out on their events calendar if you live in the southeast of the United States, or maybe you just want to go on a trip and go somewhere cool. The Canaan Valley has got some cool stuff down there in West Virginia, and I always like to bring that again, shed light on those things. So great to have Dickie Hall. I have not had him on the podcast, and when he's ready, we'll definitely have a great conversation. But I wanted to make sure to make mention of those things that he let me know about, because I think that's super important. So you can find more information about those particular topics in the show notes. So kind of jumping into more of sort of general industry information, things that have gone on in 2022. Kind of an eventful year, on the podcast. Obviously, if you haven't listened to the podcast previously, or maybe you're still a little new, I cover everything from Telemark history to industry news. Obviously, my brand, Freehill Life, our retail shop, what we're doing, our skis. I mean, I cover all sorts of stuff. And that's why I said at the beginning, I'm so humbled that people tune in every week or download, or however you want to look at it, and check out what I'm talking about. Because for me, this is just a great way to sort of debrief my brain about where Telemark is at today, where it's been, where it's headed. And that's our motto at our business, is preserve, protect, and promote Telemark. So that's what it's all about. So I wanted to kind of go back and look at a couple things that happened this year. It's always funny because time just flies by, right? And sometimes I kind of forget so some of what all has happened. And, I think as I was kind of scrolling back through some of the articles that we put out this year on telemarkskier.com, the big thing that I noticed, the top three that kind of popped out to me right away was Crispy killed the XP boot, which is a 75 millimeter boot. Scarpa put the T1 to rest, and Scott killed their 75 millimeter boots, Synergy and Voodoo. So this is, I think this is 2022 has been a really important year in terms of news, in terms of boots, because as we've spoken about on the podcast and across all of our mediums, this is actually a really big shift. And so, the new Telemark Norm boots, NTN, came out in 2008 originally. And, even when we opened the Freehill Life retail store, it's crazy to think back 8 years ago. In 2014, we still had the Scarpa T Race on the wall. The famous red and black boot, usually red and black. There was a white candy cane version that we all know about. And I'd love to see that come back, but I digress. That's how much has changed, even in the time since we have had our retail shop. But I think why this is significant, and this is always this long topic of debate, when we put these articles out, many people got super pissed off. And I understand, I think the general synopsis, and I've got links to these articles so you can go read them. If you're not familiar with some of these changes in our world, is the reasoning being, I think it differs for each company. Honestly, Scott is such a interesting situation because they haven't really made Telemark boots. They're still sort of riding the wave of purchasing Garmont many years ago. Scarpa and Crispy, however, I think are recognizing that the sales of 75 millimeter boots has been overcome with NTN boots at this point. So, but some people were really pissed about this. One, because they just don't want to change, or two, one of the topics I've discussed a lot on the podcast is people don't necessarily have an option to go to that they feel comfortable with. And maybe they do, but maybe they don't have the guidance to get to the next boot and binding combination, which is, again, one of the things that we specialize in at Freehill Life is, we're trying to manufacture a lot of our own stuff. Boots and bindings are something we do specialize in, and we work with 22 Designs. We work with In Wild that makes the Majo binding. We work with Volet. And it's really important that you've got someone to guide you into that next phase. We're sort of like Telemark spirit guides, right? Like we're walking you through. I've said that before, but it's sometimes you got to know, you've got to have somebody that knows where you're at in your Telemark journey, and they can kind of ease you into the next phase if that's what you need. Sometimes you don't need new boots. Sometimes you might want to stick with old boots. But those articles popped out to me right away, because to me, this is just a shifting time in the Telemark world. And like I've said, my personal opinion, my take on it is this is a good thing. I think a lot of other people tend to have this thought process of why would these companies do that? There's so many people that need 75 millimeter boots. The consensus in our world, and when I say our, I'm saying Freehill Life, the team, running the retail shop and whatnot, we look at it like this is the way you fasten your boot to the ski, NTN 75, whatever, But I think we do want to see more diversity going forward in terms of what types of boots are available. My hope is that by eliminating some of this excess in the 75 world, is that it helps us get more options in the NTN world, and eventually we get to the point where it just is Telemark again. Hey, I think we'll look back on this, 15 years from now. I mean, that's like maximum time frame. But we'll probably look back and like people that are getting into Telemark 10 years from now are going to be on an NTM platform, unless they're digging up, old stuff, and that'll still exist. But they're probably going to be like, this is a Telemark binding and a Telemark boot. So here we are. So I guess we'll see if that comment ages well by the year 2033. It'd be interesting to kind of see if that rings true. But that's my take on it. So all three boot companies have now eliminated the majority of their 75 millimeter boots, and especially the resort focused ones. And we're starting to shift into the new Telemark norm, as it were. Okay, so another news piece that kind of stuck out to me that I thought was worth mentioning was the M Equipment renamed itself In Wild. I think this is an interesting change for those that aren't familiar with the M Equipment. They are a Telemark binding manufacturer that had created the Majo binding. Many pronunciations. I've joked around about this before. Many people call it the Mojito. They call it the Mojito. They call it all sorts of things. It's Majo, and it's that name kind of comes from La Meige in Le Grave in France. But anyways, they renamed themselves In Wild. And I'm just looking over the press release again. In Wild comes from a fusion of the word innovation and wild, two words that are sources of inspiration and impetus for our team and our projects, according to this press release. A little history. They talk about the Majo birth in this, and the idea of creating Majo was a game at first. Can I still invent something? In 2011, when Pierre Moyad wanted to invent a new binding, the offer on the market was disappointing. There were few players. The product design was outdated and innovation was absent. Pierre then thought it was possible to propose a better binding to satisfy the expectations of telemarketers. Looking back, getting into the Telemark market was a little crazy, but Pierre is proud to have done it and has no regrets. Today, all the positive feedback from telemarketers around the world is a daily resource. It's really nice to share passion with people from Japan, US, and Norway. So basically what's going on with M Equipment or In Wild, the manufacturer formerly known as the M Equipment. I think this is an interesting one too, because I've spoke a little bit about this in kind of the newsroom and notes prior to some episodes. To me, it's going to be interesting to watch. I think in this press release that they put out a few months ago, kind of heading into the season, they say they're going to broaden their manufacturing to encompass other sports, but they definitely are going to keep doing telemark. I hope this is the case. I really do. I hope that, the Majo binding has incorporated so many fantastic features that have not been in other bindings. And I think that's really, really important. And anybody getting into the business of telemark, that's also an important thing. What worries me is that when you start broadening out in the outdoor space, telemark's kind of a cool business because we are so small. There's many challenges that come with that, but there's also a lot of good things because you have the ability, if you can survive within a small group globally, and you have the ability to ship, distribute, manufacture, warranty, all that fun stuff, and keep your business at a manageable size, I think it's doable. Oftentimes, I've seen this over the last couple decades where when people start to broaden out, of course, they want to stick with telemark because that's where they started. But oftentimes, what I've seen in the past is you'll get into a situation where people, they don't want to be pigeonholed as they start to rebrand, like in this case. You start not wanting to be pigeonholed as a telemark brand. So, I thought this was just a good little news piece to kind of bring up, more because I want to see Majo continue. I think they were the first ones to put out Tecto NTN, like actual, NTN second heel connection on their fixation, their binding. That's the French translation. But it's I'd like to see it continue. So my hope is that they will innovate and we'll start seeing other binding offerings or anything in the telemark space. And my hope is that it doesn't get too detoured because they're doing this rebrand and they kind of go off in another direction. If they do, maybe that leaves more space for someone else to come in from a binding perspective and compete, which that would be cool too. So, I think the more the merrier, and keeping the pressure on one another as manufacturers, I think is a good thing so that we can continue to grow and innovate. Bindings are an interesting one too, because there's so much DIY, do-it-yourself innovation out there that there's a lot of ideas floating around. Those that are going to take it to market, that's why I want to see In Wild stick around and we'll see what happens. But for more information, you can check out In Wild Telemark. You can just Google that, In Wild Telemark binding. There's a bunch of the press releases are up there, or you can go to their website. Okay, so probably one of the most exciting things in 2022 for me and the team was to see people get on our own Freehill Life Protector skis. What a cool experience that has been. Learning how to make skis ground up. For those of you that aren't familiar with our skis, these are not widely available. That first batch that came out fall 21 right into, most of them delivered right at the beginning of 2022. There was 27 pairs of skis in the first batch, and we'll probably hit close to double that this season, 22-23 season. But what an amazing experience for us to create a ski looking at our customer base and sort of saying, hey, where are we going to start creating? What kind of ski are we going to start making first? What kind of features are we going to look at? And that's what the Protector is. It comes in a 95 and a 105 underfoot. Those are the underfoot dimension, 95, 105. In 3 different lengths, 164, 174, 184. And this has been so cool. And I wanted to just, if you're not familiar with the skis, we got some good press. They were in the Backcountry Magazine Gear Guide this year. And a couple of reviews. I'm going to read one off our website, freehilllife.com. This was a customer, William Leaf, who left a kind review about the Protector 95s. He said, I have a pair of the Protector 95s at the 184 length, set up with 22 Designs Outlaw X and using the TX comps. We had pretty variable conditions in Idaho this year, so skied mostly groomers, crud, and used powder, 100% inbounds. These skis were great in all conditions. I found them really stable, being able to hold the edge in all types of snow. I transitioned to the NTN setup this year, and the 95s really seemed to complement these well. The harder you push the ski, the better it seemed to perform. Really, no limitations that I found. I definitely recommend this ski. Very impressive. So thanks for that sweet review, William. And if you're interested in reading more about our skis, obviously in a lot of the content that we're putting out right now, that's the coolest part is me and the rest of the crew, we're going to be skiing on the Protectors in the videos, on the YouTube channel, on Instagram, so you can kind of get a visual of what we're doing, what types of skiing that we're doing. And this is just the beginning for us. This taught us how to build a small ski factory at Freehill Life and learn how to build a ski, taking concepts and taking our customer needs and putting them into a product. And that is what I'm most excited about, is just our ability to do that and be in control of that. We were just talking about boots and bindings and all these debacles that can happen in supply chains and whatnot. This gives us the ability to at least control the products that we have the ability to make and tweak those products for the people that we're making them for. And I want you all to know out there, podcast listeners, people that shop with us, maybe you haven't even shopped with us and you just came across the podcast. What we're trying to do is we're making a great ski. This isn't even a Telemark specific ski, but we are a Telemark brand and we're making a great ski. So we've got you in mind. It's got features that work well for Telemark skiers, but the biggest thing, 100% of your hard-earned dollars goes back into Telemark. And that's what it's all about. And that's what Freehill Life is making sure that we are leading the charge in creating a Telemark specific industry that understands the size of it, the needs of it, and we can operate that way because of our size and the size of our community and the community that we're building around these products. So anyways, go check out freehilllife.com. If you're curious about the Freehill Life Protector skis, the 95 or the 105, or any skis that we may offer in the future, that's a great place to get the specs, look over it, see some videos, content about it, read reviews from actual people that are not us, customers that have paid for these skis at retail price and, had an experience, and there it is, and you can read about it there. But I'm incredibly proud that we were able to do that. And I thought that was an awesome thing to bring up in terms of the year in review. We made skis. Okay, before I get into talking about some of the favorite podcast episodes to go check out from 2022, I also wanted to mention the new documentary coming out called Telemarketas. that's announced that it will be coming out in full in 2023. But I've had the director and creator, Deanna Rivera, on the podcast a couple of times now. She's going to be doing some check-ins from Japan for us on our social media accounts this year, and I absolutely can't wait. But I thought about in the year in review, it's awesome to see projects like this that really highlight the essence of Telemark, and for those of you who haven't listened to that episode, definitely check it out. The latest one with Deanna Rivera, I think it was just last month. We talk a lot about how it was being made. She's bouncing back and forth between Argentina, Japan, and it's a really, really cool project that I think really highlights what's going on in Telemark with these particular individuals that they're doing the documentary about. And I wanted to bring that up. So lots of cool stuff happened in 2022. Lots of information with, just Telemark is growing. I think I'm just going to say that out. I'm just going to say it out loud. I think Telemark is growing. I'm not even putting stats in front of you right now. I'm just saying what we're watching is Telemark growing around the world because of people that are sharing Telemark. They're sharing the turn with people. And I think this is a good time of year for all of us to remember that, share your equipment, take a friend out, look for events to participate in at your local hill. World Telemark Day, which I'm going to be talking about in the upcoming weeks. First Saturday in March in the Northern Hemisphere, World Telemark Day. Perfect time to set aside, go out and share the turn. And I think there's just so much stuff going on with Telemark in a positive way in 2022 that it's only going to get better. And I'm super psyched about that. So kind of start heading into wrapping up this episode, I want to talk about some of my favorite podcast episodes that I think you should check out maybe during the holiday season, or if you're a new podcast listener, or maybe you just kind of skip around and catch it when you can. I know how that goes. I listen to a lot of podcasts as well in the car or when I'm doing stuff. It's hard to keep up, especially when people put stuff out every single week. You want to diversify and whatnot. So I wanted to highlight some of my favorite ones that I think would be incredibly important for you to check out. And the very first one is, and these are all episodes that happened within this year. So I wanted to bring up episode number 112, Todd Stuart, author of Nobody Owes You Tomorrow. This was one of the most heartfelt discussions I think I've had with podcast guests, and Todd is just a true legend just as a person. He is a telemark skier, but this is a man who literally lived out in the woods for 20 years in a hut that he built, and it's a fantastic story. I think for anyone who, sometimes we have those feelings of just, you just want to strip it all down and just have the bare bones of life so that you have more time to do the things that you want. This is a great episode to check out. Todd Stewart, check that out, episode 112. I won't go too deep into each one of these, but I hope that piques your interest enough to go check it out. And just such a gem of a person. Episode number 116, the death of 75mm with Taylor Johnson, who's our general manager at Freehill Life currently. And this is a great conversation. And I bring this one up not to stir the pot, but because I think it talks about these other items that I discussed in the year in review, sort of articles that we've put out or things that we've talked about. I think that's an incredibly important one. Taylor and I discuss it, and the sort of change, and we talk a lot about how your boot fastens to your ski. And I think that's a good one for context. And again, part of having this podcast and having all the media that we put out is we're trying to offer our opinion and our perspective. Obviously, you're going to take your own spin on it, and that's the beauty of the world, is you're going to take in the information we're presenting and you're going to come up with your own ideas. But I think that's a good starting point as far as news goes. That podcast is fantastic. So moving on to another one of my favorite people, episode number 129. This is with Connie Marshall, Alta legend and telemark skier. And Connie, I met many years ago when I was a sales and marketing director at Bryan Head, and she was at Alta in a similar position running the marketing department. But she's a lifelong telemark skier. She's now retired from Alta, but like that conversation is just such a beautiful one. She's such an amazing person. Very much reminds me of that Todd Stuart one I was just mentioning, like just a great person that has done so much for the snow sports world and the influence. It's such an iconic resort, over the years. I think she worked there for 40 some years before retiring. So that's a great one as well. She's just an awesome person, and I would definitely recommend listening to that one as well. Episode number 129 with Connie Marshall. Moving on, kind of for the gear folks out there, one of the fun ones I did this year was episode number 134, The Road to a Single Norm. And this was kind of a fun little riff because I caught wind of some people over on Craig Dosty's still kind of got this little forum where a lot of the DIY binding guys hang out. And I kind of caught wind of this conversation about a universal telemark norm. And again, I think if you're someone who's interested in the equipment, for all you engineers out there, aspiring engineers, tinkerers, people that like to build things, or maybe you're a business person and you like just the weird puzzle of what all of this sounds like when you listen to it. That podcast, The Road to a Single Norm, addresses those topics and more, sort of where is it headed, and me kind of playing back and forth. And there's a follow-up episode to that as well, talking about the UTN, Universal Telemark Norm, that was proposed in sort of these forum talks. And that's something I've really been having a good time with the podcast, is seeing stuff online and being able to interact with it on this platform and kind of go back and forth. And I really do appreciate anyone who's out there that's listening, that's contributing. I actually had a great, just quick sidebar, a fantastic Zoom call this week with one of these DIY binding not manufacturers, but like a binding maker. And, you know, it just was so cool because we had never spoken in person, you know, some emails and texts, but he was taking certain ideas he was hearing on the podcast and then literally reacting to them and making stuff in a 3D printer and whatnot. What a cool time to be alive. You know, what a cool time in telemark where, you know, here I am, just some random dude talking, you know, across the internet radio waves here. And there's another person there and we're kind of riffing off each other. I think that's so cool. That's how things change. That's how we take control of this thing. That's how we make it better. So, such a cool experience. So the last two podcasts I wanted to mention are episode number 139, Art Burrows, designer and telemark pioneer. Art Burrows, if you like the history of telemark, this is a great episode. Dig into it. Art Burrows is, he lives in the Roaring Fork Valley in Colorado, Aspen, Snowmass, Highlands, all that zone. He was involved with Phoenix skis way back in the day, 80s into the 90s, helping shape new Telemark boots with Scarpa. Just a really, really cool story. And I always like to encourage people, you know your history, and know your telemark history. And that's why I do those podcasts. Again, selfishly for me, we'll just put that out there. I want to talk to these people, number one, because I'm so intrigued with the stories. I want to know how it went down. I want to document it just in my own brain. And I think there's a lot of people out there too that just don't know how all of this telemark stuff has evolved. It's rich. It's fulfilling to people like me. Hopefully it is to you too. And that Art Burrows conversation is dope. Go check it out. Episode number 139. And then last one I wanted to mention for all you noobs out there, all you beginner telemark skiers, episode number 145, not too long ago, I did a solo episode called Message for the Beginner Telemark Skier. And this has been an incredibly popular episode to my delight. A lot of times beginner telemark skiers kind of get lost in the mix of everything. And I wanted to kind of bring that up. It's literally just me talking to new telemark skiers out there that may be listening to this and maybe looking for a sense of community or how to get into the sport or what to look for or how to get better at this whole thing. What they can expect on this journey that they're about to go on. So I hope you'll check that out. That's episode number 145. Whew. 2022. This has been a doozy. So happy to be here. So happy to be able to share my thoughts on telemark. Like I said, thank you for listening out there. Super grateful. Every week, anytime I get to flip on the microphone and start talking about this stuff or talk to other individuals like some of these other podcasts, I'm just, the kid in me, the little kid telemarketer is thinking, man, this is pretty cool. So thanks for being here. If you haven't signed up for our mailing list, that's a great way to stay in touch with what we're doing at Freehill Life and all of the aspects of our business, what we're involved in, what we think is cool, what media is coming out. It's kind of a good catch-all, like I say every week. If you're not on Instagram or not on Facebook or you don't want to check the website every day, that email is a great way to sort of get it all in one zone so that you can check it out. If you want to hit me up direct or follow what I'm doing, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Josh Nomadson. You can find the business at Freehill Life on all the social medias. You can email me directly, podcast@freehilllife.com. Hit up our team at customerservice@freehilllife.com. Much love, everybody. I hope you're having a great Monday. Keep rocking and rolling out there. Have fun. And hopefully you enjoyed this year in review and gives you some stuff to chew on through the holiday season. And until next week, spread telemark always. Peace.